Hello, and welcome to Unfiltered Better Think Better series. This is where we get real about our emotions, mindset, connection to food, and healing, and what it really takes to break free and feel good in your body and life again. I'm your host, Janie Shah, and in this series, I sit down with everyday people who face challenges with their health, body, their mind, their confidence, or long held beliefs that have held them back and found powerful ways to rise and grow through it all. These are real stories, no filters, no fluff, just raw conversations about what they struggled with, what actually helped, and how they create a transformation from the inside out. So whether you're on your own journey or just curious on what's possible, you're in the right place. Here's to eating better, thinking better, and living a phenomenal life. Let's go. So on today's show or episode, I guess, we have Nora Stevens. I'm so glad that you are here today. We connected through the Conspiracy, which is an incredible community that we're both part of. And I heard another podcast episode that you did. And your story just really, really inspired me, not just the experience that you've had with depression, but also the courage that it took to explore a path that maybe a lot of people would never even imagine for themselves in being able to support and help themselves. And, there's this really interesting line that you've got, I think it's on your website or somewhere. You describe yourself as the depressed girl who would never do drugs. Who tried all the tools we traditionally should work on, therapy, medication, doing the right things. And still you found yourself slipping or not always being in the best place that you wanted to be in. And then through a moment of curiosity, you discovered something really interesting, which is psychedelic assisted healing. And from that, you've had big leaps and a lot has changed. So today, I would love for us to walk through that journey together, not just what happened, but how it felt from the beginning of everything that you were experiencing to where you are today. Yeah, let's just start with that. And if you could share and say hi to everyone and tell us a little bit about before everything changed. What did life actually feel like from the inside for you?
Sure. Yes, it's been a big journey. As you said, I started out, I was the good girl, right? I never did drugs, alcohol, anything like that. I grew up in a dry household, a household where nobody drank alcohol. And it's funny to try to do this from here, right? To think back to the way it felt
Yeah.
because it all like now I feel like everything is much clearer. Like before things were muffled, but that was all I knew. So I that was just felt normal, right? That muffled was sort of the way it was. And I think especially now as I do this, I also feel like it was very sort of I was just reacting to life as it came along. I was not trying to go anywhere particularly, right? And so it's funny to be right now and sort of feel like, oh wait, I have to direct this. Oh, that's exciting, but kind of scary. And
Like I am actually in charge of my life and where I wanted to go.
right, exactly. So yeah, just it's kind of a funny place to be right now. So like I said, sort of exciting, but also like, ha. Uh, wait, before someone else was handling this.
Yeah, true. And I think that's what's really interesting is sometimes when you've crossed so many bridges, you get to this place where you sometimes don't even recognize or recall that well what life was like before because so much has happened and you're in such a great space that you're like, wait, you're asking me a really weird question to go all the way back to what life was like then. And yeah, I've experienced that in my life too with food and mindset. I'm like, I don't recognize myself 5 years ago. Um, but
Yeah.
but if you could maybe start us along the journey, if it's possible, to kind of recall what was it like that you were experiencing that made you feel or think that actually there's something more going on here, that I am depressed and that I need support.
So, I mean, I think that so I grew up in a family where there's quite a bit of depression. My dad dealt with depression quite a bit. He tried to control it with diet and exercise. He was very controlled about he figured out in his early 30s maybe that he could not tolerate eating any kind of grain, so no rice, no wheat, no corn. So that it was very controlled in the household, right? You like, oh, okay, we have to make sure that dad has stuff, the right things to eat, and we're eating lots of vegetables. And so, I mean, it was great. I mean, he was on the original low carb diet, right? I mean, it meant he was slender his whole life, and that was great. But it also, it's like, now I understand, it felt very much like we can control the world if we just control what we eat, which honestly sent me the other direction. I tended to be the overeater, the sneaky, I'm going to sneak my little carbohydrate treat,
Yeah.
But it just, so it's interesting to look back on that. But he dealt with depression, and we knew that his father had died by suicide. And so I think he was also fighting that, right? But there was also kind of the understanding that depression runs in the family. There were a number of suicides within his lineage. And so when I started feeling low and quiet and whatever, I didn't really think about it as depression, I guess, especially when I was younger. It was just, this is kind of the way it works in our family, right? That's the way it is. Mom's not like that. Dad's like that. Okay, whatever. But then let's see, I would say post-college, I came back and lived with my parents for a little while. And I remember just sitting hours in my room on the computer playing, solitaire, and just doing nothing, right? But it was also that weird post-college time when you're like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, And so my parents got me in with a therapist, and we started on some antidepressants, and those helped. I mean, it was like, I definitely remember a certain time when I sat down to play, solitaire again, and I was like, this is boring. Yeah. It was like, I couldn't quite dip down anymore into it. So in that way, it was good, right? That kind of got me going. That was fine. And then I moved out, and I did a few other things, but it's like depression just kept dogging me, right? And so I don't remember now what happened with those antidepressants. I think I was on those for a while, and then I got off, and then, it's like I'd kind of go through different jags. And I had a time in my mid-20s when, just to be very blunt, I was experimenting sexually. Basically, I was sleeping with any guy who was out there, right? And looking back at it now, I think I was trying to figure something out that had happened in my life, I think there was something sexually that had happened to me, and I didn't understand, and my body was going, we need to figure this out. What is going on? And I was very fortunate. I did not pick up any diseases. I did not, but I did eventually get pregnant. And it was funny. It was like that. All of a sudden it was like, oh, now this is real, right? Now this behavior has got to stop, because there are real consequences for this. And so it was like, I just shut it down, got an abortion, got into therapy, and found a really, really excellent therapist. And he tried to do some hypnosis with me as well as EMDR. But basically we figured out, oh, wait a minute, I think there was some sexual abuse or something when I was about 3, and that was about all I had, was just this feeling that I was 3 and that something had happened to me. And it helped, right? It helped me understand why, even in college before that, whenever I would see, you go to the book, well, I go to bookstores. I go to lots of bookstores, and I love looking at different things. And over, what would draw me is, survivors of sexual abuse. For some reason, those books, those self-help books would attract me. And I never understood, why is it this thing? And all of a sudden it was like, oh, look at that. Somehow I knew that this was going on, right? So I worked with that guy for a long time, got a lot out of it. And, but still, I mean, the depression kept dogging me. I knew this thing now, but it meant, so actually, honestly, the next person that I dated, maybe 2 or 3 years later, was the man that I wound up marrying. Right. And let me tell you, I put that poor guy through so much, like one of our early dates, I was being so teasing But really what it was testing. Are you safe for me? Right? Are you safe, especially around sex? And he passed with flying colors, which was just lovely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And
Okay.
so, yeah, so let's see, I've been with him now since for almost 25 years. And, you know, we'd gotten married, whatever. But like, so I tried a number of other antidepressants in trying to deal with the depression. And some of them were okay. Some of them, let me tell you, Effexor was so hard to get off of. I've spent a year in withdrawals on that one. That was really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I found that I'd said all I could to therapists. Like I felt like I was just talking about the same stuff, wasn't really helping. And then I also got into doing stuff with massage people, right? That it was like somatic therapy, got more further with that. But again, it was like I kept hitting up against just this layer of depression. And so in 2015, I think it was, I had applied for a job, did the interview, didn't get the job, and that I just kept going down. It was like every year I got a little harder, a little harder. And so I was starting to get kind of desperate, feeling like, oh, like there's nothing, right? I've got, I know that there's suicide in my family. I'm not going down that route. I lost my brother to suicide as well. Um, and, so there's suicide in my family. I've got kids that I'm supporting now. I've got this great partner. Like, what is wrong with me? There's got to be another option.
Mm.
So around that time, they were starting to do all of the work to make psilocybin, magic mushrooms, legal in Oregon, where I live.
Yeah. I'm
And
going to
so,
pause you
yeah,
1 second before you
sure.
dive into that part.
Yes.
I'm just curious as to what you would define depression as. Because it seems like there's so many layers going on here.
Yes, totally. So I never had the kind of depression that got me hospitalized, that caused me to injure myself. I felt like the occasional suicidal thought, once in a while, right? But that never felt like a serious
How
kind
do
of
you
thing.
even casually say that? Because it's so interesting to hear that. Yeah, if you're like, okay, I had suicidal thoughts, but it's almost like because you've recognized it, you're aware of it, you've moved past it. It doesn't seem like that crazy a thing. But yeah, okay, carry on.
And I know as I say that, it's just like, so if I died, how would people manage it? Would they even notice? That kind of
Mm,
thing, right? So it's more like that kind of suicidal thought, not an actively, I'm going to throw myself off a bridge, sort of thing.
okay.
Um, but I think that what was happening for me, so I never got to the point where I wasn't going to work or that I wasn't doing the things that I had to do. But more and more often, I would go to work and I would think, can I just hide under the desk right now? I just want to hide under the desk. I don't really want to be here. And, more naps, more crying, more not dealing well with stressors, things like that. And this was 2019, right? So the world was kind of a crazy for us, right? We'd elected, Donald Trump. Does not align with my political with so many things for Donald Trump. I was kind of in denial about that, but it just felt like the whole world going to hell in a handbasket, as we say, right? Um, so yeah, I mean, I've never had really really severe depression, I would say, but yeah, it was interfering with my life, and so I kept trying kind of the same things, but I was like, I'm not going back on antidepressants.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that my brother's suicide may have been related to him being on an antidepressant, and not having a therapist at the time. So, and he apparently he missed a dose, right? That's what they say is, that if you miss a dose and this one had a particularly short half-life, did he get sort of below his starting point, and just dive way deeply into depression? Maybe. I mean, we
Yeah.
know that antidepressants can actually exacerbate suicide risk.
Right,
So,
yeah. And that's what's interesting about this form of treatment as well. But I want to say thank you for sharing that because it's important for people to recognize that there's different layers of depression and what you're feeling and experiencing, right? And if you're not feeling great and happy, then you want to look out for support and help somewhere and see how you can make yourself feel better. But yeah, this other side of treatment with the medication is, you're right, there's like serious side effects. And if you stop, that's like crazy as well. You don't know what's going to happen or how you're going to be thinking. It messes with your brain chemistry quite a lot, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
now, as you move through this journey, was there a particular moment when you realized, wow, I can't keep going like this? Was it that job that you didn't get, or was it just a culmination of all these little events that made you realize, okay, I've got to do something different?
I feel like the job, so just because this is the sort of thing that happens, right? The job interview landed on the anniversary of my brother's death.
Wow.
It was not a good, it was not a good
Yeah,
experience.
I can imagine.
And it was a Zoom. It was like it was my first Zoom interview. It was, and I'd been told, oh, people will have, they'll be like, they can't show any emotion, flat affect. Okay. Well, it turned out it was all my friends. It was with a place that I had been working, and they were all friendly, but I had amped myself up into this. It's gonna be terrible. You know. But I think the point of that one is that I just noticed that it was like after that, my mood kept dropping and kept dropping and kept dropping. I mean, that was maybe 4 years prior. And my partner's a therapist, and so I know about like the patterns that happen. He said, it's bad when people are still coming to me for therapy in the summer, because usually the summer's fun. You're out, you're having fun. This is great. And for him, he's a marriage therapist, and so it'll be people. It's like, wow, even the summer sun and hanging out together is not helping this marriage. Things are bad, right?
Right.
But for me, that was like, oh, look at this. Even over the summer when things are lovely and I'm out and it's just, I keep, how can I keep doing this? So yeah, it wasn't, I don't think it was an event per se. It was just starting to get down to like, this is getting worse. And I don't know how to change the trajectory of it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so then opened up curiosity, and there was this door that opened to consider something different. How did that come across your field?
Well, so like I said, so my partner being a therapist, right? He happened to know people working with psychedelics in the underground, right? At that time, it was illegal, but people were having good effect, right? He knew personally several people who were working with it underground, and they anyway. So he said, "Let's go learn more about this." And because of it becoming, people trying to make it legal, there were like talks happening, and so we went to this talk it was a couple of different people talking, people talking about the bill to make it legal, but also people talking about the medicine itself. And one guy I really appreciated, he was a part-time faculty member up at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. And he had this series of, I'm a scientist, right? I teach biology, and so science really appeals to me. And so he had all these articles about people taking the one that there were a couple that really struck me. One of them was that they'd done a single dose of psilocybin, the magic mushroom, right? Of psilocybin, and 14 months later, no other medicine, people were continuing to improve their depression. And I was like, what?
Yeah,
I've been told I have to take a pill every day, right, to get anything. And you're telling me one dose could help somebody that much? Whoa.
yeah,
Okay. And it's interesting, at the time, I was also thinking about my dad, right? I was also thinking about my dad, and wow, this is gonna make me tear up here. Like, taking this, he was a doctor, and he was always the one who was experimenting on himself, right? Like he'd find a new treatment and he'd be like, okay, I'm gonna do it on myself first, and whatever. Drove my mom crazy. She was always like, don't do that. But I was thinking, how about if I'm the one who tries this out and see if this is the kind of thing that might help him, right? This is the man who, I grew up with, that didn't drink alcohol, didn't do all these things. And I'm saying, I'm gonna shed my good girl thing. Like, I'm not sure that this good girl thing of no drugs is right in this case. Like, this doesn't sound like a drug, like, oh my, this is your brain on drugs. This sounds helpful. What's going on
Yeah.
here? Right? And with the
Mm.
science backing it up, right? And it was like, and that was not the only article. Like, this guy was showing multiple articles talking about, I think they were all about psilocybin because of what the push was. But it was, another one that I totally loved. They had two images. So it was like a circle with connections between different brain areas looping in between, right? And then the other one was the same brain on psilocybin, and the connections are huge and many, many more, many, just beautiful, beautiful. These connect. It was a lovely image, easy to find.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta try this. I need to try this. So,
Mm.
as I said, my partner had connections, right? And he was able to hand me off to someone that he knew. So it was a nice warm handoff. So I walked in going, all right, you know this stuff. I know nothing. I am in your hands, right?
Yeah.
And so, are you ready for me to tell you about my first session, or do you
Yeah,
have questions
I
for
was
that?
gonna ask, like, as you walked into this first session, what were you hoping for, and what were you afraid of?
So that was a very interesting one. Again, it's always interesting to try to think how you were before, right?
Yeah.
But I walked in going, okay, here we go. Let's do this. And I brought a book that had pictures of all of my family, several generations back. And I like told the person, I was telling her about who's this and what's this relationship and whatever. So a psilocybin session, if you take a big dose, is about 6 to 7 hours, just to
Oh,
have you have an
okay.
idea. I talked the entire time because I think what I was doing was the same thing I would have done with therapists, right? I would just talk because we're not going to talk about scary stuff. I'm just going to talk you around it. I'm smart. Da, 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 da. And so I came back, a couple days later, we did the integration session, and I said, I failed. I did, here I came in to try this new modality, and I did the old thing. I did my old talking thing to defend
Mm.
myself. So I failed. And she looked at me so like, what? You can't fail, right? There's no wrong way to do this. Some people yawn, some people laugh, some people scream. You talked. Okay. What?
Mm.
This was okay? What? Really? Are you sure? And I realized that I had been terrified. I was so scared, but I was hiding it from myself. I was really afraid that I was going to come out of that thing a perfect person and I wouldn't know myself. Right? And so I had defended myself the way I knew how, and I talked. And she was like, you kept apparently I told stories and kept the storyline. And she was like, how did you do that? Most people can't, under psilocybin, they can't keep track of a thought, and you kept the lines. So I'd used my defenses, but it was because I was afraid. I used the defenses that I had. But once
How
she
did you
said,
come to the realization that it was because you were afraid?
it was only afterward. It was like I realized that I had been trying to defend myself because I think, like I said, I thought I would not recognize myself on the other side, and that was terrifying,
Yeah,
right?
and I think that's something a lot of people probably go through, is that when we do go through this process of healing or wanting to change, sometimes we're afraid of the change, right? Because you don't know who that other person is. And if it's an identity you've held for so long, it can feel scary not knowing who you are on the other side.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So you recognize that after the
Yeah, I was
session.
able to recognize it. Yeah, well, and I think her just saying, no, you can do it however you want. There's
However you
no
want
wrong way to do it, right?
to.
Was so validating and like, oh, okay. And so I then did so and so that was like that one didn't feel like, let's see, how do I say this? Uh so that was November maybe that year, and then so I did another one in February
Uh-huh.
because at some point during the November one, I remember she needed to get up and go to the bathroom or something like that. So she left the room for a second, and I remember looking out and seeing it looked like a grove of trees, just of course in my mind, right? And
Yeah.
there was shadows in the trees, and I thought, I wonder what's in those shadows. you know? But then she came back and I just started talking
And
again.
then you carried on.
And I went off into other things. But it was like kept remembering that of like I could have gone and looked, right? But I was
Yeah.
distracted. So I wonder if I could go and look now, right? And so I went back and in February then I did another one with her and I was much more relaxed because I knew like, oh, I don't have to defend myself anymore. I'm not going to become someone else. I'm becoming more of myself rather than less. And some friends
Mhm.
said, it's like people who knew me well said, you're brighter, right? You're less hidden, you're showing and you're brighter. So it was really amazing. And so keep in mind, right? So that was February 2020.
Okay. Yeah.
Everything shut down. But I am so glad I did that before everything shut down, right?
Shut down.
Because things got so hard during the pandemic. I was home
Hmm.
with my kids. I was doing my best to keep them in school and continue doing my work and all those sorts of things. It really helped that I had lightened up. I
Yeah.
don't know how I would have tolerated all that. Um,
Yeah.
uh,
And what was it? What did you sort of understand in that second session in February that you had never been able to see before in all the years of the work and therapy that you had done?
I don't know. I remember that one just being like much lighter and happier and like opening things up. Nothing particularly specific, but I think just because partly because COVID, crashed into us so soon after that, right? So I think I don't remember, like I probably didn't get a chance to fully integrate all of that because of COVID.
Okay.
But um but I just remember it being lighter. And just feeling like, oh yes, this is a pathway. This is something we can do, right? And the person who's working with me told me, I was thinking like, oh man, am I going to have to do these like every month or something like that? She said, oh no, 2 or 3 times a year is a lot. Oh,
Is a lot.
is a lot. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so how
So
many sessions have you had for yourself?
I've had, let's see, I keep losing track a little bit. I think 7 big medicine journeys now, but
Since
not one
2020,
since 2019. Since
2019, yeah, so
2019,
like 6 years.
but not in the last 2 years, right? It's like I got to a set of them that were real. So I had a number of things happen. I did a few more. For some reason, I always like to do them in November, so I did them in November. And I found that the ones in November tended to be quieter and darker. It was like a winter one,
Right.
and I would kind of come out feeling a little disappointed, like, oh, it wasn't that fun. But I also realized that it was sort of like digging in the dirt, you got to dig in the dirt and loosen it up. So then in the spring or the summer, when you do one, now it's brighter and we get flowers and, things like
Yeah.
that.
How
And so,
interesting.
yeah, that was really fun. But I eventually had one in, let's see, the year I turned 50 that really just blew so many things open, right? I figured out somehow there was some big layer that came off, right? And that's the one that really got me going. I mean, my partner was like, "You're like reborn at your half century here. This is really amazing." I was, thinking, should I get a phoenix tattoo or something? This is cool.
Rising.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I decided that year, so things were finally becoming legal and whatever with the psilocybin, and so I decided to go and get the training. So I'm actually a licensed psilocybin facilitator, so I can
Yeah.
legally do it here in Oregon. And so that was really cool then to really dig in with other people who are doing that, people with different experiences, all those sorts of things. So I did the training. That's a 6-month training. And we had this funny catch 22 of it wasn't legal yet where we were. So part of our training required that we take it with a licensed facilitator, but we were the licensed facilitators who weren't trained yet. So we couldn't, and it wasn't legal yet. So,
Back and forth.
back and forth. So the state was like, we don't know, you'll figure it out. And so we went,
Yeah.
so one of our teachers took us down to Mexico And so I did a really big trip down to Mexico, and that was really amazing under a big old monstera leaf outside, and really, really
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah. And I think it's probably important to say at this point is that when you want to do something therapeutic, right, where you're trying to really discover something, if you're trying to help yourself in some way, it's really important to do this with a licensed facilitator, right? Because you can hear, and I don't know if the listeners have heard this, but you can do lots of like mushroom trips, right? Like happy trips. But it's really important to do this sort of work with someone who's qualified, who you trust, who you have a connection or relationship with, because it can get dark otherwise, or it can go in a way that you didn't want it to go. So
Yeah.
I wanted to just point that out right now. Is
Yes.
for anyone who's listening, this is not
Yes.
just something, oh, yay, cool, I heard about this thing, let me go try it. No, please take your time, research, find the right person to work with on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. So I'll agree with you. So set and setting, right? You want to not only you want to have the right mindset coming in, you want to have the right environment, right? That I had a friend who took some at a party. She, it was okay. It was kind of fun, and she lay back on some steps and put her hand on a dead bird, and all of a sudden, I know.
yeah,
So that would have been a bad trip. And it's not that you won't have bad trips with a facilitator, even, right? It's just that that facilitator can help watch your physical self so that you can go to those scary places. So you have the support to face the monsters that are giving you trouble, right? And so, and also, if things start to go awry, that they are a sober person with you who can help you, go to the hospital or, get whatever you need.
yeah,
Absolutely. Um,
yeah.
because we know, like, it may sound fun to go, take mushrooms and run through the forest, and some people can do that, but it's not good for everybody, right? And you need to
Yeah,
know something about yourself. So,
yeah. If you were to describe what it feels like to go on this journey, how would you describe that?
so I think people experience it differently, right?
Mhm.
I am not a person who gets big visuals generally, right? I don't see a lot of things. I more see sometimes the world with variations in it, I guess, in terms of my hallucinations. And some trips are very somatic, they're very much in the body, and you get almost nothing visual. And other trips are going to be very, very much more sort of in your head, that sort of thing.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it depends what's around you. It depends on what your mood is coming in. It depends the things that are working on. We as facilitators, we encourage people to set an intention. What is the thing you want to work on today? And then to let it go.
There you go.
Because,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't know what the thing is that is going to be like your mind or your psyche or whatever the thing is that's helping with this. You think, well, I need to work on this goal, and so I'm going to go straight to it. And your mind goes, no, we got to go talk about this first, and we got to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about this, and it's over here, and that, and actually, we're not doing that today. We're going to touch on this one.
I love that because that's what happens. Even when I work with clients when we're doing rapid transformational therapy and you're going into the subconscious, you think I'm going in to address this thing, right?
Right.
Like, oh, why do I have cravings for sugar? Let's just stop the cravings for sugar. And your subconscious is like, yeah, that's well and good, but hey, listen, that's kind of somewhere linked to something back here about, self-love or your connection or some of your needs not being met in all sorts of different ways. And yeah, I love how your mind is so powerful. It will just take you where you need to go in that moment and kind of only hand you what you're ready to deal with at the time
Yes.
and in the moment. It's never going to give you something that's you're not going to be able to handle at that time. And it's interesting. It is very different for every person. Like I think everyone I've spoken to who may have done this or tried this, it's very different what people come out with. And just earlier, not this year, in February, I went on a retreat, and one of the sessions was actually a healing mushroom session. And for me, I've realized now that I'm a very visual person. So even when I'm doing other forms of healing or therapy, sound baths, cacao ceremonies, whatever it may be, I'm very visual now. And this, if I were to describe what I went through, there's this really cool show on Netflix about mushrooms. And these are just not even just magic mushrooms. These were all just generally about mushrooms and how mushrooms enrich our soils and our life. And if you watch that show, it's
Fantastic
really
fungi,
cool because,
was it?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one. It just, what was
Fantastic
that again?
fungi. Fantastic
Fantastic
fungi.
fungi. Exactly. And in that show, they show all these like colorful connections and they show the roots of the mushrooms and they show what I would have thought a sort of psychedelic journey would look like. And in a way, my journey was that because there were moments of like so much color and like all these like fun pictures and visuals coming up. And then there'd be moments of like real life coming in and seeing really clear pictures and scenes and different parts of my life from various ages. Like it was from when I was a kid all the way up to university. Different things would like pop up, and I'd be like, "Oh wow, I needed to see that." And so, for me, it was a really up and down sort of journey because it was happy moments and color and fun and feeling light, and then boom, hang on, here's a real scene. There's something going on here, and it's crazy how one session can really uncover a lot, like a lot. I whenever I'm explaining this to somebody, I'm like, it felt almost like 10 years of therapy had uncovered itself, in that one journey. And so yeah, I'm really grateful for that trip because it showed me a lot about worthiness, which was something I didn't fully recognize that I was lacking in belief in, as well as there was aspects of judgment and trusting that all came out from there. And it's been really interesting to see this year how I've sort of integrated all of that or learned from that session and noticed different things coming up. But yeah, it's very different for everyone because everyone else in that retreat, when we were chatting about it the next day, I was like, huh, okay, yours was very different. So yeah, it's what you go in with, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and actually you touch on there how integration, right? Bringing that new knowledge back into your life is the more important part, right? We can go out, you hear about people going out and doing ayahuasca journeys or whatever, and they're doing they do a big trip and then they come home and they change nothing and nothing changes, right?
Mm.
So often because you have there's some interesting research now into critical learning periods related to psychedelics. So in psychology, there's the idea that there's a certain period in our brain, for instance, when we might learn to speak, right? And if you miss that, if you never encounter anyone talking to you in that time, you never learn to speak because it shuts down in your brain. The brain goes, oh, that's not a stimulus we need to pay attention to. We're going to shut it down. Psychedelics reopen those. And so they're doing research that looks like in mice, they can reopen the critical learning period for about 2 weeks. So if you have a habit, let's say you want to stop smoking or don't want to drink or whatever, that sort of thing, you have like the 2 weeks to really decide, okay, now what do I want to change? And really start to set a new habit in motion. Now, you can fall back into it. Those are old ruts, but it's like the ruts aren't as deep anymore. You have a chance to pull out and go a different direction.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. I love
Yeah.
that. Very interesting. What surprised you most about your healing process?
So this is what's been interesting is I really feel like I was running on a 3-year-old protocol, right? That especially my defenses, a lot of the way that I worked in the world were mostly what I had, when that thing happened to me when I was 3, just stopped, right? And so I was like, okay, I gotta, think the world is not safe. I have to run this myself. And so I'm just gonna do it any way I can figure out. And I think I was running that for basically the first 50 years of my life. And now I'm starting like, oh, I have other skills. Look at that.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, I feel like I've been doing like a real quick little, grow up again, so that's been about 3 years. And I've gone through a, kind of a rebellious teenage period. It helps to have teenagers in my house too. But like, I'm going to do it the way I want to. And I went through sort of a nihilist period of like, well, if, maybe nothing matters at all. And so it's been funny. I just, it's like I'm speed running growing up, and, but also, like I said, getting to that point of like, oh, I'm actually in charge of this, right? And it matters what, like, so much more aware of my words and how they affect people and how I affect people. And I had no idea, right? And I think I've kind of pulled, I've been playing the I'm invisible pattern for a long time, right? Of just like, it doesn't really matter if I remember your name because you're not going to remember me,
Mm.
things like that. And I'm not going to have any effect on you. Wrong. Turns
Yeah.
out people notice me. Hey, look at that. People are, it's and not that I was ever terribly, untactful. I imagine, like we all are, we accidentally tread on someone's feelings. I was trying to be careful about that, but I was just more so being aware of, no, you actually make a difference in the world, right? What you're doing makes a difference. And in my teaching I got that, but outside of that I always kind of felt like, I'm invisible, right? It doesn't matter what I do. No, that makes a difference. Oh, shoot. Okay. Cool. And wow. What do I do with this?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what
Yeah.
I've learned so much as well is that so often we're operating from our 3-year-old, our 5-year-old, our 6-year-old mind because it's during those critical years from 0 to 7 that you form your beliefs, your identity, your meanings, and so on. And so if they're not what you need as an adult, you've got to look back and you've got to figure out what was going on then so that you can now choose to be the adult that you want to be and live the way you want to live with the beliefs that now make sense for you today, not as your scared 3-year-old self, but you now, Nora, as the adult who's empowered, who's shining, who's bright, and
Yeah.
can take over. Yeah, I think that's a lot of the work that goes on is that we can now let the 3-year-old know she's safe, she's okay. Let that younger you know everything's fine so that you can operate as the adult that you are today. Yeah. And I guess then how has that healing changed how you show up today as a mother, a partner, a friend?
Like I said, I think I'm just much more mindful about, what I'm saying, how I'm being with people. Um, like just one thing I've been noticing, my partner's very extroverted, right? And so he tends to, I always sort of went on his coattails, right? It felt like, like he would say, "Oh, hi, everybody doing?" And I'm like, "I'm here too," but I felt like I didn't need to say anything because Sam said something. So it's fine. But at one point someone said to me, "Well, do you not like my kid?" What? Why would you say that? Well, you never say hi to him. But Sam said hi. Oh, maybe I need to say hi too. Huh. Stuff like
Yeah.
that, right? Like, no, it matters what you do. It's not just the people around you. It's not just the group. It's
Yeah.
mine. Oh, okay. Huh.
Okay.
But I think it's also slowly, I think because of all of that stuff, I don't remember my childhood very well, right? I don't have a lot of real specific memories. And so trying to understand my kids as they go through this time and, with kids, right? There are traits that are yours and traits that are your partners and traits that are just theirs, that kind of thing. But trying to understand, okay, well, how would I feel in that situation? Oh, yeah. Well, I would have felt really upset if my parents didn't believe me when I said I was feeling unwell and didn't want to go to school, right? Okay, all right, all right. Oh, well, now it's been 4 days that that my kid's been out of school, so I have to step back and do the parent side of, all right, maybe we need to push a little bit here, right?
Yeah, yeah, interesting. I saw this really interesting post the other day, which was saying that when you're a parent and you have children, the different ages of the children can trigger in you any emotional trauma that you have unresolved or unhealed. And so it's really cool as a parent that if you're aware of that and can observe that, it can help direct you on, okay, cool, maybe this is a little bit of myself that I need to work on a little bit more, which I thought was really fascinating. Is
Totally.
that, yeah.
Totally.
As we're coming to time, I'm I'm curious, looking back, what do you most want people to know about being lost or being depressed and finding your way back?
I think that it's worth doing it, right? I would have said, you know, I just had a little bit of sexual abuse. I just had a little bit of depression. I'm still going to work. I'm still taking care of my kids. I'm not non-functioning. It doesn't really matter. It matters. It really matters, right? Like I was just surviving in my life, doing okay. Like on the surface, I was doing okay. But now I have the chance to do more and to help the world more and to, it's like that work on yourself really makes a difference to everybody. It really makes a difference to the world, right? I really, I mean, it's so funny. People keep getting mad at me because I say I just had a little T trauma, just it was just a little bit of sexual abuse, and they go, Nora.
Yeah. It's interesting the number of times you mentioned it, even as we're chatting, you said it really like as a fleeting thing. It's very interesting.
But I mean, and it's affected my entire life.
Yeah.
But I also feel like, but I've managed, right? Humans are amazing. Humans, look at how all this stuff we can manage. And so I think what I've done is I've compared myself to people going through war or like, crazy, crazy big things and still managing, right? And I think about some of the things they've gone through and I think, how could they do that? I don't know how they could do that. But I'm okay. I'm doing fine. But what I'm saying is it's so important. It's worth making the effort. It's worth doing the thing for yourself, for your kids, for your community, all of those things. I really believe it's worth clearing those things because, my life isn't perfect now. Good. I'm glad it's not perfect. But it's
Perfect is
so much
boring.
better, right? Yeah, perfect is boring. But it's so much better. It's more interesting. There's so many more places to go. I'm, part of the thing that I'm shifting at, like, I love teaching the biology and it's time to go and do something else. Right. And so at 53, I'm stepping into a new career. It's terrifying. And it's
Yeah.
really cool. Let's do it.
Yeah. And and maybe I'm putting words in your mouth here, but you've gone from just managing and being fine to how would you finish that sentence?
To shifting and changing and growing, I think. Because I'm not like I'm much better and I think I'm just more aware of what's going on. Like my tendency to want to, still just go lie on the couch on a hard day, right? Just go lie on the couch. Wait a minute. Do I actually want to lie on the couch? Do I need to lie on the couch? I have that ability to say that now, rather whereas before I would just get stuck on the couch, right? Or eating my carbohydrates or whatever.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think there's a few other things like I was hyper vigilant and that has almost entirely gone away. I uh, yeah, I recently like basically stopped eating chocolate, which has been a challenge for me my whole life. And I was able to go, I have an apple here and chocolate, and I don't really care which one goes in my mouth. So this chocolate is going away. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's interesting. So like I haven't done any psilocybin for about 2.5 years now. And because I'm still integrating all of the stuff I learned in the last one, and it keeps unfolding. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's also a really important point, that integration afterwards, implementing, learning what you learned and then doing something about it afterwards is super key to actually creating that lasting change. Yeah. And okay, I have so many questions and we're at time, but do you feel that this change that you are creating now could create the change for the future of your family, in the sense that you've said, oh, there's a history of depression in my family. But now this could actually be the break in that, to say, no, guys, we're changing the identity of our family. That's not something we do or experience.
Some parts of it. I think that my behavior as a parent will help that.
Yeah.
Other parts of it, I don't know. I think there are
Mm.
some physiological things, the way that we deal with stress, the way that we deal with the world. I don't know, right? I actually, in one of my journeys, I definitely went and looked at that tree, and was like, well, I could see still the suicide showing up if we go along a certain route. And we can
Mhm.
also see other routes where it doesn't show up. And so I have to sit with that, right? I have to kind of be with that possibility. And that's hard. That's really, really hard to sit with that possibility. But I also think that I like, especially with my kids, like we talk about it, right? They know about Uncle Paul. They know that he died. They know about this lineage. But we also say, but this was also, it doesn't have to be, right? It's not genetic. It's not, there's pieces, but there's, so it's, I think partly I try to be very open with them and talk about all of this. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And you're doing a fantastic job of being able to change the narrative, because so much it's our beliefs, what we think and say, it's our environment, it's our habits that lead to this being the outcome.
Right.
Whereas now you're starting to shift all of that. I mean, even just shifting your thoughts, your habits of choosing the apple and not wanting the chocolate. Soon, your response to stress is going to be different as well. And then all those factors can compound and possibly change the outcome. So yeah, I just really wanted to make sure I asked that. Nora, wow, thank you so much for being here and sharing your journey, and sharing it with so much honesty and humanity and reality as well. And I think, anyone listening or watching is really going to feel a sense of possibility through their own story, as well. So before we close, I want to just honor the depth of what you've shared. You've walked through darkness, you've learned to listen to your inner wisdom, and you're rebuilding this life that feels so much more aligned, grounded, true to you, and your new path. And I'd love to end with asking a question that I ask all of my guests, which is, if healing had a voice, what would it say to you right now?
Welcome to the pathway.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. And for everyone here today, if this conversation resonated with you, helped you, or made you feel seen, please be sure to hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And come join our free Facebook community, Eat Better, Think Better. It's where these conversations continue and where you'll find real people walking the same path. And if you're ready to go deeper in your own journey, whether it's healing your relationship with food, shifting your mindset, or breaking free from beliefs that are holding you back, you'll find more support, resources, and ways to work with me at www.eatbetterthinkbetter.com. Until next time, here's to eating better, thinking better, and living a phenomenal life. Let's go. Bye.